disclosure, saying that it would be the last bullet in the gun of the cabal as the alliance closes in and they start to collapse, using the power of the media and disclosure to bring that out to overshadow everything else that is going on. Is that how you feel disclosure is it might happen?
Yeah, I think they've got more pieces on the chessboard lined up all at once than I've ever seen before. I mean, a massive chamber in the Great Pyramid, a massive chamber under the Pyramid of the Sun, a massive cigar-shaped object from outside our solar system that NASA just announces in our solar system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we even had, after all this time, let's not forget, and you were there, Jimmy, Corey Good gives me this briefing saying that they're going to announce, through tabloid media, that they're going to announce ruins under the ice in Antarctica, and that we had to publish before they did that. And I wrote that article, and it was literally the same day, within about 6 hours, that the first tabloid articles came out, thus validating what our insider briefings had said. And there's a couple folks out there that said I stole this idea from them. That's totally hogwash. We got this through briefings. We've been talking about it on Cosmic Disclosure, and then it actually came true. So it's very important to understand that both the Alliance and the Cabal are going to do some kind of disclosure as this whole thing unfolds. There is a battle of how disclosure is going to happen, how much they're going to do, how quickly they're going to do it, what kind of a timeline it's going to take. But again, it's difficult for people to imagine, first of all, that the Alliance is real. That will change. I think it's starting to change now. But they are going to do some type of precision removal of Cabal from power. Now, I don't think they're going to kill most of them. I think there might be some fatalities. But I think what we're going to see is a lot of people that just are arrested and will have to stand trial. And, like with other types of trials, if you provide valuable information, you can plea bargain and get your sentence knocked down. So I think you're going to see plea bargaining. But let's remember, some of the people I've talked to who are not that involved in our community and who are working professionals have said to me, well, if this does happen, it might really not be that big of a deal. People are busy, they get back to their lives. Yep, okay, now we know that there was this evil group that was trying to run the planet, but we took care of them. Let's go back to business as usual. I really don't think that's what this is going to be, for several reasons. The Cabal has been severely, severely dragging down the economy to the point where it's ultra-rich and poor with really nothing in between. So the economy's been devastated, and people have been greatly affected by that. A lot of that stuff will start to be alleviated once this takes place. There will be all kinds of new laws passed against corruption in government, corruption in finance. There's going to be restructuring of the financial system that will ultimately make there to be a lot more prosperity. But also, as the days and weeks and months unfold, and people truly now grasp the magnitude of the lie that we have lived under for so long, it's inevitable that they're going to go and revisit these questions, and they're going to start to take those questions more seriously. Are we alone in the universe? Is there life after death? Is there an extraterrestrial presence active on Earth? What are UFOs? Where do they come from? Is it one type of group, or are there actually many different groups with many different UFO models? How involved is the military-industrial complex in this? If Roswell was real, and they've had ships that can go well outside our solar system for 70 years, did they leave the solar system? What did they see? Have they built anything out there? Do they in fact have bases out there with large numbers of people working at them? Are those people told that everybody on Earth died? Do they not even realize that they could ever come home? those questions are going to be asked. And I think that's what the cabal is the most scared of. It's the full disclosure. It's the secret space program, the existence of extraterrestrials, both positive and negative, and all of this greater infrastructure that apparently has been built and kept hidden from us. And so I think that what we're looking at here is a road to a much, much greater viewpoint for everybody, a viewpoint in which so many of the things that we took for granted as being the truth will be totally overturned.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And voices in the wilderness like you and me, the people that were talking about this in advance, just like what happened post-Snowden. After Snowden came out, everybody else who had been saying things like what he was saying before, like William Binney, all of a sudden those guys are getting a lot more press, and they're getting a lot more attention. In the same way, people are going to go back to Sergeant Clifford Stone, they're going to go back to Colonel Philip Corso, they're going to go back to dozens and dozens of insiders, they're going to go back to Disclosure Project in 2001, 39 insiders on stage. I was there when it happened. And they're going to say, wait a minute, I always laughed at this thing. I always thought the UFO thing was bunk. It was ridiculous. It's all been disproven. Is that really true? And so the cabal knows how vulnerable they are because it's like an unstoppable avalanche of truth. One thing leads to the next thing. The next thing leads to the next thing. On and on. And they're all logical connections that people are going to make, and the conclusions will become inescapable. And ultimately, what the Alliance is telling us again is they're going to try to hold off on these mass arrests as long as they can. And as the more and more information comes out, it's up to us to spread the word now, to be brave enough to risk whatever we think we're risking by sharing the truth, which I think, honestly, for most people, the risk is extremely low. The cabal does not have the ability to hit back at the majority of the people that are doing this. Even the people on the front lines are fine. There's hardly been any serious problems. I mean, yes, a couple of my insiders have been severely affected, but that is not typical of what's happening in our disclosure community. That's a very rare, special case example. The average person shouldn't have any trouble at all with being able to go public, to make videos, to write articles, to share it with their friends, to have parties at their house and watch videos and talk about this stuff. This is what we need to do. And there's apparently going to be some data dumps coming up in the near future that are going to be a lot worse than whatever we saw last October with WikiLeaks. And as this all unfolds, it's going to be so obvious that we really become the embodiment of the disclosure movement. It's not going to happen from mainstream media. It's going to happen through us working as a team, working together in unity, not fighting over who gets to take credit for it, because none of us who are reporting on this should take credit for it. This is not something we did. This is something that is being done by an international coalition of military and government officials.
But as we push this thing out, and I'm picturing like a 6-month timeline here, and you say unfold, I say unravel, okay? But as this unravels, we still have to put this mess back together at the back end of this in 6 months. And it has the potential of really, really spinning out of control. So how do we put it back together?
There's a little bit of two-way communication that I have with the Alliance, because obviously they're giving people who I know, like Pete Peterson and Corey Good, they're giving them briefings. So I'm able to say some things, and they're reading my Skype chats, and they're reading my emails and so forth. So if I say something in writing, they're going to see it. And so there is some two-way communication, and one of the main things that I've been communicating back to the Alliance is I am concerned about not the hard power, right? Because the hard power represents like a military action. Do they have the hard power to take down the rest of the cabal? Apparently, yes. The hard power exists. They have the They have the manpower, they have the equipment, they have the logistics, they know where they got to go. They can apparently coordinate this so they can do it all at once, or at least they're doing a lot of it before they do it all at once, and the parts that they're getting done now are just criminals that, it's not going to necessarily rile up the public that much. So at some point, they will have the hard power to do a big thing all at once. But then you got to get into soft power. Now, soft power, if you read things like Lao Tzu, The Art of War, all this kind of stuff, a lot of the Asian martial art lineages talk about the difference between hard power and soft power. And I don't know if they fully have grasped this, and this is the feedback I've given them, is soft power is how do people perceive the use of the hard power once you do it, right? How do people accept what has happened? And so you better believe that any remnant of the cabal that still has any control over the media whatsoever is going to try to paint a mass arrest as being a terrifying Hitlerian fascist takeover of the United States by Donald Trump. That's what they're going to try to say this thing is. And I'm not really sure how they intend to handle that, because I'm not privy to hardly anything. I just get little crumbs, okay? Mm-hmm. Hopefully they have a way to deal with that. But my concern is getting people, I grant you that a lot of the people who listen to this will not believe me. They'll think I'm totally crazy, and it doesn't matter how much evidence you show them. It's the same thing I've been dealing with for 20 years in this field. It doesn't matter if I've written one book, Source Field, with over 1,000 academic references, another book, Synchronicity Key, over 700, my new book, over 350 references, rather. So then people say, David has no evidence, right? So it doesn't matter if you prove it. It doesn't matter how much evidence there is. People make an emotional decision. So again, it's like, maybe it doesn't matter how evil you show that the cabal is. It doesn't matter if you prove that they're pedophiles. It doesn't matter if you prove that they're satanic. It doesn't matter if you prove that they wanted to kill 90% of the population. It doesn't matter if you prove that they did 9/11. People are still going to say, yes, but can we trust the people who took them down? Or is this just is it just one evil group fighting against another evil group?
That's right.
That's what we got to work on. And that's where I think, even if people cannot believe any of what I'm saying right now, my gosh, if even 10% of the briefings that we're getting and the evidence that lines up with that briefing is real, I really don't think we're going to wait very long. And then in the aftermath, people are going to go back to this show and they're going to say, my God, how did he know this? How did he know this thing was going to happen? And I don't have any special knowledge. I just am connecting dots that are available, some of which are in the public eye, some of which are not in the public eye, but I have been doing my damnedest to try to make them public through whatever means I can, even in the face of what within my own personal life has been very severe death threats, harm done to people I care about dying or almost dying. So this is very real stuff.
This is what is interesting, David, that any one of these pieces to the puzzle, any one of these dominoes, whether it is the UFO question, whether the chamber in the Great Pyramid or Antarctica, any one, and we can continue the list, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
But any one of these dominoes falls, any one, it all comes apart, and it's going to come apart quickly. It's going to be just a remarkable thing to kick back and watch.
Well, it's also going to be very disruptive for somebody like you and me, because all of the traditional media, we're going to need full-time employees to handle Bloomberg, CBS, NBC, Washington Post, New York Times. They're all going to be calling. So that's part of what I'm expecting is going to happen. I had dreams telling me that I needed to have a security gate on my house, which I paid to put in even though I rent. And the reason why I put it in is because I was told in these dreams that if I didn't do that, that my entire driveway, once this thing breaks open, was going to be filled with press, with cameras, and waiting for me to step out of my house so they can bombard me with microphones and flash bulbs and questions. And so, you know, just to briefly go back to what I was saying with Tom DeLonge here, when this stuff takes off, you can't control it through one source. It's going to be all of the different people who've bravely been trying to talk about this. They're going to be getting the calls. So, third phase of the moon, Secure Team 10, top YouTube channels, UFO TV, right? These people, I could go on and on. You know, there's a whole bunch of these types of independent media outlets that have been exposing what's going on, that have been discussing the truth, that are now going to be thrown into the limelight. And so the unraveling will happen through the people who, on their own initiative, made themselves into authorities by the hard work they did. And believe me, it is difficult, and it's become infinitely more difficult, to actually capture people's attention. There's so much content on the internet. There's so many people who are latecomers to the game who are trying to establish themselves now. And it's almost like, simply put, the earlier it was when you started, the better chance you have of having the attention of the public, because it's so rapid and shifting now. There's so many people trying to do this that it's very difficult for somebody to consolidate an identity that's consistent. But there are those people, and so it's going to happen. The only way disclosure is really going to happen is by all of us working as a community. And that's why I always have said, and this is quoting Richard C. Hoagland now, we either hang together or we hang separately. And I think there is a real need for people in the UFO community, in the, you know, truth community, the conspiracy analysis. We need to stop fighting with each other. We need to stop acting like any one of us is top dog. We need to be willing to cross-reference each other's work, to name-drop each other, to be honest about the commitments that each of us have made, the sacrifices that each of us have made, and then move forward as a team. And it's a very solitary road. Everybody's a lone wolf. Everybody that's doing this has had to be their own marketing department, their own video editor, their own researcher, their own everything. And so because of that solitary nature of the path, I think people have a tendency to be very protective and to try to act like whatever piece of the puzzle they have is the most important piece. And so I have always been very happy to, you know, host panels and interview other people and make them look cool and ask them questions instead of talking about myself and bring up their information. And so the way we're going to win this is by synergizing this community. And so I applaud you, Jimmy Church, because you probably just as much as anybody out there are doing that very thing. You're, night after night, you're bringing up these people, you're bringing out what they have to share, you're letting them have a platform to be heard by hundreds of thousands of people, and you're making that happen. So I'm very happy that this is the fourth Thanksgiving in a row that I'm helping you out with this.
Well, you know, and thank you for that, David, but you're absolutely right. It's the community itself and staying solid and showing them that we are united, and that's the only way that we are going to move forward, and the community needs just that. The community could care less about infighting. That's not what they want to see. That's not what brings them together. And speaking of that,
as soon as we start busting shots at each other, we lose, and that's why I was reticent to say anything negative about Tom DeLonge at all.
Well,
but the only reason why I did mention some of the critique points is simply because it's an artifact to try to be the center point of something without bringing in everybody else.
That's exactly right. And certainly myself, you, and those, our community, and the audience needs to understand what I'm trying to say here. When we get together, and we do at these conferences, all we have is, the speakers and the researchers and the authors, all we have is each other. And we hang out and we talk and we do the best that we can. But it's a small, tight group. It is not infinitely large. It is not. It's a very small community. And speaking of that, David, before we wrap things up, you're going to be speaking at the next big conference, which is the Conscious Life Expo. And that's right. And we're going to have a great panel Friday night. Which is yourself, Corey, Linda Moulton Howe, Jay Widener, and William Henry. What an amazing panel that's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
But what are you going to be speaking about for the rest of the weekend?
Well, a lot of times what I do with Conscious Life Expo is I try to hold off on coming up with a talk title for as long as I can. And the reason why is so that if something unpredictable happens between now and when I absolutely have to submit those talk descriptions,
right,
I will be able to talk about what's going on. So if I were going to do it right now, I would definitely be talking about the Q Insider, Meganon, this FBI guy, the progress towards disclosure, new insights into the secret space program. I would be talking about the fact that Corey and I were saying that there was going to be habitable caverns under the ice in Antarctica, and now Australian National University has shown that they exist. They've shown that there are rooms under the ice in Antarctica that you can go into, natural rooms, natural caves where you can wear a T-shirt. That was an amazing validation. So with Conscious Life, I always try to bring it right up to the cutting edge. And so if I had to commit right now, those would be the kind of things I'd be talking about. I always tie in Ascension, the solar flash. My research on that front has expanded dramatically, and it continues to expand dramatically. There's every indication that all of this is leading towards some kind of spiritual, spontaneous evolutionary event for humanity, and I do think that disclosure and learning the truth is part of how that happens. That as our minds expand, it's also unlocking our DNA in some fashion. And there does appear to be aspects of DNA that are evolving. So I usually have like 2 major lectures and a couple panels and a lot of stuff. I'm all over the place there. So as we get closer, I will consolidate exactly what I'm going to talk about. But that one's coming up. We got Contact in the Desert. I've signed on with them again.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
They've got a great resort that they're going to be doing it at. It's not a casino. I asked them that. If it was a casino, I was not going to do it. But it's not a casino. It's a wonderful resort. And simply put, they had to go to a bigger venue because we were literally choking that place in Joshua Tree, and there was power failures and people sweating and a lot of really, it was fun, but the community needed a bigger venue, and they found that for us. I'm gonna
miss the golf carts, though. I'm gonna miss.
I'll miss the golf carts. Yeah.
David, thank you so much. Get some sleep.